Hey, did you know that your normal blood tests have a ton of data in them that you can really use to improve your health? For example, just looking at your complete blood count. For example, your white blood cells or your neutrophils or lymphocytes can give you an idea of the bacterial or viral infections going on in your body right now. Stay tuned for a really cool episode with Dr. Kylie, where she explains how to look at your labs in a lot of detail that you can do yourself. If you're looking to get thicker, fuller, and stronger hair, then make sure to check out fullyvital.com. The team has come up with 4 different unique products that stimulate the hair follicles in 4 different ways to create thicker, fuller, and stronger hair. So make sure to check out fullyvital.com and use the code anti-aging-hacks for 15% off. Are you enjoying the videos on this channel? If you are, then please make sure to hit the subscribe button down below so you can get notified when we release new episodes. Our goal on this channel is to slow down your aging and to help you look and feel younger so you can live your best life. With that said, make sure to hit subscribe and let's get on with the episode. Hello and welcome back to the Anti-Aging Hacks podcast. Today, my guest is Dr. Kylie Burton, DC CFMP, who's an international bestseller with her book, Why Are My Labs Normal? She specializes in functional medicine, helping thousands of individuals with seemingly impossible health struggles find answers, healing, and hope, even if they've been told their blood work is normal. Besides helping patients, she teaches practitioners of all backgrounds how they can level up their patient results using her techniques inside her mastermind. Dr. Kylie hosts the top-rated podcast, Beyond the Diagnosis with Dr. Kylie, and has been featured in 5 international radio shows. On TV, she's been a guest on Good Morning Utah and Fox 26 Houston, and the list. All right, with that said, Dr. Kylie, welcome to the Anti-Aging Hacks podcast.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Faraz.
So tell me a little bit more about your background and how you got into health and wellness to begin with.
Well, I grew up in a Western medicine world where if we got a little bit of sickness, we went and got our antibiotic and we got all of our vaccines and we just walked down that path because that's what we knew. I got introduced to nutrition in college as my undergrad is actually in nutrition, my bachelor's degree is, and I liked the idea of how food can be medicine. Little did I know that the food pyramid and the food plate and dairy is a good source of calcium and all that stuff that I learned in college would get tossed out the window. But it was a good starting spot. So I had this bachelor's degree. I knew that it was just a step somewhere. I didn't know what that next step was going to be, but you really can't do much with a bachelor's degree in nutrition. And I wasn't about to be, actually, I got denied twice from dietetics school, getting my master's in dietetics. Thank heavens. I was always number 13 out of 12. But that led me to a different route, which is what I do now. I had no idea what chiropractic was, no clue what the word functional medicine was. I got hired by a chiropractor to be his assistant, who then introduced me to functional medicine. He dabbled in it with a couple programs. And I was just thinking like, wait, why isn't this mainstream? Actually finding the root cause, looking for other solutions than just Band-Aids to calling, managing whatever diagnosis you were had just received. Loved it. Then I decided, after I had so many women coming into his office who would tell me a lot about their woman problems, libido and menopause and the cycles and hormones and all the things that us women understand that men just don't ever have to deal with. So they were very hesitant to tell him, even though I would say like, hey, you can help you just have to tell him. It's not my job to tell him. So I finally was like, you know what, screw this. Let me just go get the freaking expensive piece of paper myself and be in those shoes where I can help the way that it needed to be, way that women needed to be seen and be helped. So I did. I went to chiropractic school. If I had to go back over and do everything again, I would probably go the DO route, because chiropractors get known as back and neck crackers, and that's it. Yeah. So when people ask me like, what do you do? I said, well, I'm actually a functional medicine doctor. Oh, well, what's that? I help people who get told that their labs are normal. I figure out what's actually going wrong with their health and help them get better. Oh, that's so and so, that's so and so, rather than I'm a chiropractor. Oh, you crack backs and necks. Actually, I don't. I haven't adjusted for like 4 or 5 years, and I never plan on doing it ever again.
Hmm.
So it's a different road to take, but I love it.
Yeah, totally. It's really interesting. There's a lot of in the interviews that I've had over the past few years, there's been quite a few people that were trained as chiropractors back in the day, and then they transitioned to do regenerative therapies or functional medicine or integrative medicine. And it's really cool to see that there's ways to branch out of what you're doing. But once you understand the body from a chiropractic standpoint, you can add more value instead of getting logged into the Western medicine, the path that you have as a doctor wearing a lab coat, and that's what you do for the next 40 years. I see there's chiropractors doing interesting things as well beyond just their degree. So that's cool to see.
Especially since COVID happened, because
Mm,
a lot of people, I was lucky enough to already be virtual when that happened. But I work with practitioners, even one recently, like they're in Illinois, and they lost their entire practice. Like they're a
geez.
huge 20-year wellness, thriving business gone in a week because of what had happened. So
Right.
it's it's rough, but at the same time, it opened and created a lot of opportunities
Hmm.
that now they get to have more freedom. They're not tied down to the 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, half the day, Saturdays. Like they get to create more freedom for not only themselves, but then help more people while they're at it.
Totally. I'm all for more freedom and better results for individuals if you can help them that way. Now, how did you get into reading labs? You said you had somebody that was mentoring you, and that's how you got into labs? Like that's
Sort of.
okay.
I I'm in Utah,
Hmm.
which the culture is you have a lot of kids and
Totally.
big houses that you can barely pay for. And the mom is usually a stay-at-home mom. So they're living on one income.
Hmm.
Um, I would see my dream was to have like this big brick and mortar practice that had a child daycare center basically, so the moms could come in, get the care that they needed, and have somebody else watch their kids while they're in the office. That was a dream in 2017
Mm.
when I graduated. Uh, Never even got close to becoming that thing. And I'm glad, because what I found was they don't have much money that they're willing to put into their health. And I say that on purpose because everybody has money for their priorities.
Hmm.
This just wasn't a priority. And alternative medicine here in Utah is not, it's the very last resort if you dare try it.
Mm.
So it was a lot of uphill battle that I knew I was coming back to, because I went to school in Portland, Oregon, where there's a naturopath and a chiropractor on every corner, and nobody goes to see their Western medicine doctor until they've seen those other two first multiple times.
Wow.
So they're the first resort, not the last. Whereas here we're the last.
Hmm.
So I was trying to figure out, I know all these functional medicine tests exist. I'm very well trained on the OAT test and the Dutch test and the GI test and all the things. But there was one big problem, the price tag.
Hmm.
I wanted people to get like $1,000, $2,000 of tests so that we could get to the bottom and figure out what exactly was needed in treatment. Well, that was the amount of tests, and then it was like they had nothing left for a treatment plan or supplements. It was just this big financial battle of how do you help everybody that needs help, but not, lose your mind because you're working your guts out and you can't support a business because you're not bringing enough income in, right?
Hmm.
So I finally had to figure out, after several seminars, several trainings, just kind of piecing my own methods together with some of the best knowledge from other experts in the industry, how to take the blood work that people already have and use it. It saved us time, it saved us money, and it saved us a lot of grief. Like we tried ordering blood work, but because we're an outside facility, like LabCorp wouldn't let us use their blood draw facilities.
Hmm.
A couple others. I tried mobile phlebotomy companies, like going to people's houses and drawing blood there. It was just a logistical nightmare. So I was like, let's just use the labs that people already have, see what's there. And if we have a sufficient amount, we can work with and we can get started on it. People loved it. And I loved it too. So when COVID hit and everything went virtual, I was already on this virtual platform using the blood work as my method to help people figure out, one, what was wrong, and two, what do we need to do to get you healthy. Go ahead, please. I take a lot of slack. I've got a Facebook ad running right now. I'm getting a lot of haters who are saying, you're a chiropractor. You don't have a license to read blood work. One, they're wrong. And two, I don't read blood work to diagnose. And there's a big difference. When you go to your doctors and you get blood work, and if there's not anything diagnosed worthy, you're going to get told it's normal. And that's a good thing. We don't want to have some major marker that tells us we have fatty liver disease or a stroke or we have autoimmune disease, whatever it is, because then we're just going to get put on a management platform for the rest of our life. Whereas I see the blood work as, okay, you're unhealthy. I don't care what diagnosis you come in with, what symptoms you come in with, you're just unhealthy. What do you need personally to go from unhealthy to healthy? And that's where the blood work has answers in the way that I view it.
Interesting. So this is a very good topic because most people look at blood work, right? I just got to get it done once a year or however often they're doing it. And the CBC or some of the other vitamin or mineral statuses on that, to me, I barely even glance at my CBC. I'm like, is it normal? Is it normal? Okay, cool. Everything's good. Move on. Right. And so I've heard you talk on different podcasts about the CBC, and there's a host of information you can glean from it. And I was just taken aback by, wow, there's wealth in this information, and I never even thought about it. So how much, and also I think a second overlay to that is that there's the ranges that have been established, right? This is a good range. So 0 to 60 is a good range, but 61, you're really bad. Like you have crazy disease at 61, but at 59, you're fine. So that is something that confuses me as well. And I'm not sure that's the right way to do it. So I'd love to get your perspective on what are you able to glean out of seemingly normal lab results or CBC values that other practitioners don't look at.
Okay, well, if you're listening to this, go grab your blood work because you're going to want to see. So let's talk about the CBC, because the CBC is the basic standard lab test that everybody gets. And thank goodness you've been told it's normal. If it's not, they're going to look for things like cancer because your white blood cell count is way too high. And that's like over 20. I want to see the white blood cell count between 5 and 8. Now, a lot of these ranges I didn't come up with. Dr. Datis Karazian, he's one of those brilliant MDs who has 9 trillion letters next to his name. Him and his team came up with them around 25 years ago. I use them and I have manipulated them some based on how many labs I've seen and correlated it with the symptoms that I've paired them with. But his range is from 5 to 8, and I stick with it, but it's not conclusive. So say like you have a white blood cell count that's 5.8, and you might be thinking, oh, cool, great, I fit within the functional range. You might, but let's always make sure that we look at the bottom part of the lab and make sure that those markers line up in place as well. So the marker you're going to want to pay close attention to is the neutrophil count. You'll see on the CBC, there's the white blood cell count, the very top of it, and then you're going to get a lot of red blood cell markers. We're going to bypass the red blood cell markers for now and jump down to the neutrophil count. If you don't see it, your doctor ordered a CBC, and that was it. The neutrophil count is required in a CBC with differential.
Okay.
So when you're ordering labs, when you're asking your doctor to order labs, make sure you get a CBC with differential.
Is that what they do normally? Differential?
It's becoming more normal, but there are some times where I just want to wring the necks of ordering physicians and be like, it was the box next to it. Why couldn't you just check the box next to it?
Totally. Yeah.
Instead of just the CBC. But they're more and more common. Very rarely do I see just a CBC nowadays.
Got it.
So the neutrophil count is a marker I pay close attention to, and you should too, because if it's over 60%, 60 is the magic number, you're fighting a bacterial infection. Now, that bacterial infection can look like joint pain. It can look like gut problems. So a functional medicine lab test known as the SIBO test, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth test, that test for things like chronic diarrhea or chronic constipation, what's causing it, you can bypass that test with this one marker inside your blood work.
This is why you say symptoms are maybe not the first line of attack. It's maybe look at the blood work first, because you can bypass some of the things. You can complain of SIBO, but you have to go get a SIBO test and do all that stuff. But if you come here and get the CBC or the complete blood count, then you get more information that might help you just bypass that test completely.
Yeah, it's why I say I don't treat diagnoses. It's why I say I don't treat symptoms.
Very interesting.
Because
okay.
Symptoms are just a presentation of your unhealthy body.
Mm-hmm.
And if those symptoms happen to get clumped underneath an umbrella in which they can get diagnosed as, say, fibromyalgia, for example. Okay, they really don't know what's going on with you, but you have chronic fatigue, joint pain, and what's the other one? Chronic fatigue, joint sleep. You can't sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there you might get some relief with Lyrica, which is the #1 medication for fibromyalgia. But let's reverse and let's say, okay, if you have joint pain, if you can't sleep and you're always tired, there's a reason for it. It's not because of lack of Lyrica. There's a reason why your body's presenting with those symptoms. Mm-hmm. Let's figure out why it went from healthy to unhealthy, unravel those requirements, and those requirements for me, I'm going to find inside your blood work. The ones that you already have, the ones that the doctor says, you're normal. Thank goodness you're normal, but are you truly functional the way I see it? So we can say fibromyalgia could be caused by a bacterial infection. I've seen it a lot. Mm-hmm. And that bacterial infection, very rarely are there just one infection. They're usually co-infections. So now I've got bacterial, fungal, and possibly even viral, which is the most common triple combination of infections. And those are systemic. So say, for example, Parkinson's runs inside my family. Hashimoto's might run inside somebody else's family. Why does somebody like in my family get Parkinson's at 35 and another person in the same family with the same genes, why do they get it at 65? Those genes had to be triggered at some point. What triggers those genes? Those bacterial and viral and fungal infections that go unnoticed for years until finally the body's like, I'm done fighting. I can't fight anymore. I don't even have the ingredients I need for my immune system to do what it needs to do. I give up and I'm just going to start attacking anything that I'm told to attack. One person, it might be the nervous system, like Parkinson's in my family. Another person, it's their thyroid, like Hashimoto's. Another person, it's their joints, like rheumatoid arthritis.
Wow, this is so interesting. I'm sorry to cut you off. You were talking about the white blood cells and the neutrophils and how they should be under 60%.
Yeah. Next marker is lymphocytes.
Mm-hmm.
The lymphocytes, you want to see 30%. That's the magic number. If they're above 30%, the lymphocytes' main job is to fight viruses. So you might be fighting chronic fatigue and you're like, why am I so tired? And I have to take a nap before I get the kids from school, or I'd rather just go grab takeout because I'm so tired I can't cook dinner. There's a reason why your body's so tired. If it's so busy fighting a low-grade virus, you're not going to have time or energy for anything else. Like think about mono as example. People get diagnosed with mono at 18 years old, maybe 22 in college. They're so exhausted, they're falling asleep in class. I've been told this many times. Or they just have to drop out of the semester because they physically can't do it from mono. Well, flash forward 15 years, and it's a mom who has 2 kids she's battling chronic fatigue, And yet everybody keeps telling her that it's anxiety and depression, and she just needs more sleep because of the kids. The mono, which is a virus, was never completely taken care of. So her body's been fighting this low-grade virus for 15 years until the point where she's like, what the heck's wrong with me? I'm not the same person I am when I married my husband. I want to be the mom like I always dreamt of being, but I physically can't be it. It's more than just depression. What is it? It's a low-grade virus.
So these low-grade viruses or bacterial infections can last in your body for 10, 20, 30 years?
Yeah.
My goodness.
Think about them as infections. They're really never they're never gone. It's just a matter of keeping them dormant. Making sure your body has what it needs to fight them off and making sure that they stay inactive. It's like I've worked with a couple people recently who have seizures. Nobody has a clue to what's causing the seizure. The frequency, when it happens, no clue. What we've been able to do is every time they get a seizure, if possible, go get blood work within the day. And we can start to trace what's happening inside the blood work with these seizures. Well, for one instance, every time she has a seizure, her neutrophil count is like over 75%.
Wow.
So part of her, if you want to say it, treatment for seizures is to make sure her bacterial count is less than 60. We'll come to find out she also has major gut problems. So it's like all correlated. Yeah, the seizures are first and foremost, but underlying, we've got other health issues that all lead the seizures. Why seizures at 25 years old? Why not 45?
Wow, this is really interesting. Okay, I want to come back to this later on. So we talked about neutrophils and lymphocytes in the CBC, but these are the differentials. You said the white blood cells should be anywhere between 5 and 8. And there's a lot of red blood cell numbers, I think. Are there any things you look for in the RBCs?
Red blood cells get a little bit trickier because they're male versus female. The ranges are different. But the one thing you want to know with red blood cells is iron status. And then, like you said, with your hair stuff, when you've got folate and B12, can the body use those B vitamins? We call it methylation. So a lot of times I'll get people who have an okay CBC, they've been told it's normal, they get their B12 status, they're told that their B12 status is low, so they're going to go get injections. Well, that B12 going inside their bodies not really doing anything because their body can't efficiently utilize it. So where I go from is instead of giving more B vitamins, I'm going to give the body ingredients it needs to utilize those B vitamins. And then here's the other part with the red blood cell counts. A lot of people will fight with me on this one too. Well, there's no need for an iron panel. The red blood cell counts are fine. I've looked at thousands of labs. I've seen several with iron panels and I've seen several without. The CBC and the red blood cell markers are not the most sensitive things in the world for iron. So I would recommend you always ask for an iron panel. Always.
Okay, what does that tell you? What are you looking for when you ask somebody to get an iron panel? It's I believe it's not the most expensive test by far, but it's not. I don't believe it's under $100 either. So what are you looking for on the iron panel? Because there's TIBC, there's ferritin, there's iron. What interests you the most?
I want to know their iron status for one.
Okay.
And the reason why is because a lot of people, like, I'll give you an example here again, real quick. Got a text message from somebody who I'd worked with years ago. And she's like, I'm going to the gym, but I am so tired after the gym. I just physically can't recover. I'm going to my doctor's next week. What blood work should I ask for? Told her the list. Everything looked really, really good until I saw the iron panel. And I'm like, girl, how are you even getting out of bed? Because your iron is so depleted. Did the doctor give you anything? Like, that's how low it was. Did he recommend IV therapy? Like, what did he say about this iron? She said that they gave her a prescription. Great. Glad it was nothing. Glad they just didn't send you out the door and looks good kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because it was like 9 for an iron, and ferritin was like 42. It was so low.
Yeah.
So that's really important because that's going to help her body recover. Now, would I have guessed that? No.
Mm-hmm.
I might have thrown it, some post-workout thing, but I would have never known unless she went and got a full comprehensive blood work. And she had to be a little bit pushy with it. I know, give me all this stuff, but I see it as puzzle pieces. And when we're lacking puzzle pieces, you don't have a full, complete puzzle.
Right. And you're also working with data that's already available to you, right? Because you don't want maybe to tell them to go get new tests that would cost them a lot of money. So what you're doing that's really cool is that you're working within what's already available, but also is asking for specific tests like the iron panel when you need to. And so even for us, when we've got the hair supplement, the Fully Vital, the one test we recommend women get when it comes to their hair sometimes, when we get a sense for they're not getting enough iron, is the iron panel. And I've got friends in Los Angeles and other metropolitan areas that go vegan because that's cool, right? And that's totally fine. If you want to be vegan, that's fine. But just know that you're going to be at risk for having low iron levels, low folate, and also low B12. And so that's something you got to supplement for or get enough through nutritional sources. And so that's interesting that you say that. Are there additional tests outside of the ones you've talked about? So we talked about red blood cells, white blood cells, neutrophils, lymphocytes. We talked about iron. Anything else that you look for that has some very good telltale markers that you're like, that's always something I got to look at?
That's a loaded question. Thyroid, we could walk down the avenue of, but thyroid gets a little bit more complicated than just a simple answer. Vitamin D. Vitamin D is my one marker. Like, I was so happy to hear you say nutritional deficiencies, vitamin D.
Yeah.
Because holy smokes, people are deficient.
Totally.
And the whole range is between 32 and 100. And that's the normal range. Okay. I want to see people between 80 and 100, and I don't care if they're above 100. I've had people, my doctor freaked out when he saw my vitamin D was at 131 and he told me to get off of it. And now I feel like crap.
Because you got off of it.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it's like the simplest thing that people can fix because every cell needs vitamin D. Every cell. It's the key nutrient for our immune system. And yet we're told to be terrified of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something very interesting that I learned is I've got a trichologist. I've got multiple trichologist friends, and trichologists are people that study hair, and they've got these microscopes, and they look at your hair follicle like 50x magnification so they can really see what's going on. And he would tell me that, so he was in San Diego. When clients would come to see him, they'd be vacationing and they'd be on the beach in San Diego for a few days. And so he would see them when they come in, and then a few days later they come back, and he'd test them again, or he would look at their scalp again, and he would see thicker hair coming in right behind the existing hair that was thinner.
The sunshine and the vitamin D.
Yeah, because they're in the sun all day and they're getting lots and lots of vitamin D. So that just blew him away just to see data in 5 days, a thicker follicle, just the hair follicle is getting thicker as it comes out of your scalp. So vitamin D is extremely important. I'm glad you brought that up and that you test for it. Okay, so I learned something really interesting today is that there's a trove of information available in existing lab results that maybe people don't look at that much or don't value as much as they should be doing. And the other thing I learned was that bacterial and viral infections can inhabit or live in your body for years, if not decades, and your body's constantly fighting them or managing them, so to speak, and they stay dormant for the most part. But sometimes if your body doesn't have the resources and they become active, then you can be facing problems or symptoms that you might not know what to do with. And so there's obviously ways that you recommend once you understand what's going on with the WBCs or the neutrophils or the lymphocytes. And then I would assume that there's natural ways that people can beef up their defenses against the viral or bacterial infections.
Yeah, vitamin D is my main one.
Okay.
So if you were to get started, like, I just need someone to get started, Dr. Kylie, vitamin D. That's it. Okay. And most people, the regular dosage is 2,000 to 5,000 IUs a day.
Mm-hmm.
That's junk. That's like nothing.
Okay.
Unless you're less than 5 years old, then you can take those doses.
Okay.
But even like newborns, and they say, newborns should have 400 IUs of vitamin D. Screw that. I'm giving my kid a whole lot more than 400 IUs.
Mm-hmm.
So my recommended dosage for a 3-month vitamin D, let's just jack it up, get you feeling better, get the cells what it needs, both every cell and the immune system, is this. So start with this and make sure it's good quality stuff. Don't be going on Costco or even Amazon getting vitamin D. You need like top-notch stuff. 25,000 IUs of vitamin D per day.
Wow.
Now, the prescription dosage, when you're getting this from your doctor, if you're less than 32 and you're lucky that they actually did something about it, is 50,000 IUs per week.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big difference.
Yeah.
So 25,000 IUs of vitamin D per day for the first month. And then the second month, you're going to do 20,000 per day. And then the third month, you're going to do 15,000. And then I don't care what time of year it is, maintain at 10,000. Especially if you're an autoimmune person or if you have autoimmune in your family. Like, I work with a lot of autoimmune, and they'll tell me there's a noticeable difference in how I feel when I'm on vitamin D versus when I'm off of it.
Wow. That's
Just
so
that
interesting.
one vitamin, that's it.
Yeah, that is so interesting. I remember back in the days of the viral infection that was going around the world, they were recommending the 50,000 IUs once a week. And I took a few of those and I was like, man, that's a lot of vitamin D in this one little pellet that you take by mouth orally. And so, wow. Yeah. So I'm pleasantly surprised.
Hi.
Yeah, totally. And so science hasn't found any upper limits for vitamin D that are actually harmful to you, right? So you can take this safely for a longer time.
I have not found them. I have talked to one person who knew so-and-so who experienced toxic levels of vitamin D, and they were doing, I think they said 100,000 IUs per day as like a test of how high can I get before I start seeing the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
So it's literally a fear factor game. There's nothing backing up toxic levels of vitamin D. We haven't seen people experience it, but yeah, oh my gosh, when it's over 100, hurry, stop taking it.
Yeah, totally.
People feel the best when it's over 100.
Gotcha.
Especially the autoimmune guys. And then when we start talking about anti-aging, anti-hacking stuff, vitamin D is a simple thing to keep track of and implement.
Totally. I'm a big fan of vitamin D. And I'd like to ask you maybe your opinion. A lot of women, it appears, much more than men, seem to experience autoimmune issues. And we know there's a lot more going on. You have your monthly cycles, and there's the menopause, and there's stressors that women face, especially as they're rearing children that maybe men don't. But it seems to be significantly much more or happening much more in women. Is there any data or opinions that you have on why autoimmune is on the rise so much these days?
One, the amount of crap our body has to fight. Not only from an internal perspective, but from an external perspective. Like, think about the air we breathe now versus 20 years ago. The water we drink now versus 20 years ago. And it's more than just the food we eat. Yeah, that's important. But there's a whole host of environmental factors. I mean, I saw one statistic where it said 80% of Americans spend most of their time indoors. 50% of American buildings have mold.
Wow.
So here we are hanging out in these indoor places, putting on our sunscreen because we're scared of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we're breathing air inside a building that is producing mold in the air.
I believe it. They're not inspecting those HVAC systems that often. So,
Think
and they're
about
not even
our schools, hotels. I mean, hotels and schools are the biggest culprits. If you have a struggling kid in school and they seem to be okay at home, but yet the teacher keeps talking about, ADHD or ADD or whatever the heck they want to call it, there might be mold inside the school that is triggering your son and your daughter's brain.
Yeah, something to chew on for sure. Okay, so do you work directly with people, Dr. Kylie?
Not often anymore.
Okay.
I like to help more people at one time. So I have my book. It's called Why My Lab is Normal. You can go grab that on Amazon and then come join the podcast, be on the Diagnosis with Dr. Kylie. Those are the best places to get started. And then just stay tuned because I got some good stuff coming out for patients in the next few months.
That's great. Yeah, she's got a podcast that drops twice a week. So good job on doing the efficiency and
for right now it does.
For right now. Awesome. Any last thoughts before we log off here? Okay.
No, I think we covered a whole lot. So I hope you guys grab your labs.
We did. I learned a bunch, and I'm going to be finding my labs and looking at them with a microscope in the next few days. And if I have questions, I'll email you, which thankfully I have your contact information now. But I think for most people, the takeaway would be definitely there's more information in the labs than you think. So start looking at that and, start treating the CBC with a little bit more respect than we have in the past.
With the last thing before we get off here is don't go running to your doctor and telling them that you have a bacterial infection or a viral infection. Like, they're not trained to look at labs that way. It's not their fault.
Right.
But don't go running to them because they're going to laugh at you in your face and tell you to stop listening to podcasts. This is stuff that you get to do. You're now in charge of your health, not them.
Yeah. And so work with a integrative physician or a naturopathic doctor that can help you in this way, correct?
Yeah. And I do have a whole host of practitioners who are functional blood work specialists that I've trained. So if you're interested in working with somebody one-on-one, reach out to my team, drkylieteam@gmail.com, and we can connect you with the right person.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for offering that. With that said, Dr. Kylie, thank you so much for coming on the Anti-Aging Hacks Show. This has been great.
Thanks.